Cancel culture is the new evil. I mean, I'm a little bit late to the conversation. It has been for the past few years, but since then it has only grown beyond the scopes of the internet into an actual culture phenomenon. I mean, it's all Fox News ever talks about. Yet it seems like nobody can actually agree whether cancel culture is a good or bad thing, or what it even is, or if it even exists at all. I mean, some people say it's the pure evil. It's threatening free speech on social media and on college campuses. Some say it's not even a real thing, because have you ever seen a cancelled person that had to suffer long-term consequences from that? And some say that cancel culture is just holding people accountable. It's accountability culture, because how dare you think you can do a bad thing without facing any consequences from that? And some say that even doing that, holding people accountable, criticizing them on social media is just too much, because how dare you blow up this small, minuscule thing and invest your time to make a big fuss about it on social media? There are bigger issues in the world, right? The problem is we don't have a commonly agreed upon definition of what cancelling is and what then also constitutes a culture of cancelling, which is an obvious issue, right? I mean, how am I supposed to know that the person opposite me is talking about sending literal threats to physical well-being to a person while I'm just talking about engaging in criticism on social media? How are we supposed to agree on whether cancel culture is good or bad if we can't even agree what cancel culture is? And I'm not actually trying to solve this issue in this video. It's not what I want. And I mean, who am I to think that people need my authority on giving a definitive definition on cancel culture? Instead, I want to look at a case of a cancellation or attempted cancellation. That's debatable, where most people would actually agree that this is a classic act of cancelling. But in order to do that, we do have to talk about the word, so that at least you and I have a common understanding of what we're talking about here. So let's get into the origins of the word. Just as many popular internet lingo that then slowly makes their way into real-life use, the word cancel in its current iteration has been coined by the Black community on Twitter. It has been used roughly since 2014 to describe a withdrawal of support for a person who has been deemed as problematic. This is also important vocabulary in this discourse. I think we can agree that the act of cancelling is probably just as old as time. I mean, you ever heard of boycotting? But of course, the big new factor in cancelling is the use of social media. Now, most dictionary definitions are somewhat similar to this. However, colloquially speaking, people often seem to think of different things when we talk about cancelling. For many, particularly those who lean probably more to the right of the political spectrum, it seems like cancelling also includes actual acts of harassment, which I would always reject to include in any definition of cancelling. But what makes the difference between just a shitstorm on Twitter and a cancelled person actually facing financial consequences? Now, one of the two factors in this equation, I would argue, would have to be public attention. So, of course, if just one person with 50 followers on Twitter decides that somebody needs to be cancelled, it's probably not going to make much of a dent. So there needs to be a community of people that collectively agree that one person has done something problematic and that they need to be cancelled for that thing. After all, there are many cancel-worthy causes in the world, but the ones that actually get cancelled are the ones with the right amount of public attention on them. Now, the second factor is basically implied in the word. Example, I'm gonna cancel my HBO Max subscription after Euphoria Season 2 has finished airing, and I wouldn't have to do that, or I actually wouldn't be physically able to do that if I wasn't subscribed in the first place. I do realize that when it comes to a person who are more often the victims of cancellations, those rules don't strictly apply. In some cases, you may be following a person on social media, and in that case, you might be able to quite literally cancel a subscription, but very often that's not the case. I mean, how many people are out there that you consistently financially support? You may, for example, only buy a movie ticket to see an actor in a movie like once every 3 years. And that actor will probably not care much if a few less people go to see his next movie in 1 or 2 years, as long as he still gets hired for new projects, which is not our responsibility. Like, we're not the casting directors doing the hiring. But, as already implied in the title, we're going to talk about LANY, which is a band that actually got cancelled by their own fans. Now, LANY is a pop band from Los Angeles, including 3 male members. They had a few relatively successful songs, but are not very popular. They have 10 million monthly Spotify listeners, and they did open on tour for Halsey, Troye Sivan, and John Mayer before. They're not huge, like they're not Ariana Grande, they're not even The Neighborhood or the 1975, but they were known for having a relatively small but very dedicated fan base that also consisted of mainly young women and LGBTQ plus folk. So much so that they actually sold merchandise, proudly claiming that they have a female fan base. We'll come back to that in a little bit. And when I'm saying dedicated, I'm talking buying physical copies of albums, which is rare nowadays, buying merchandise, going to tour, maybe traveling long distance to go to tour, making and creating art, getting tattoos inspired by them, just in general, investing a lot of time and money into the artist. And LANY was also known for interacting very closely and having a close relationship with those fans. So, for example, by interacting with them on social media and by meeting them after concerts to take pictures with them. Now, in 2020, a few allegations came to light that made some fans question their support for this band. I'm not trying to be a tea channel, so my explanations of the allegations are not going to be in depth. There's other places where you can check them out if you want the further context. But the short version is that basically a few allegations came out that one of the tour crew members, which they hired and had a also close friendship with, allegedly, engaged in some inappropriate behavior with fans, some of which were underage. Later, it was also revealed that the lead singer of the band allegedly has a history of having relationships with fans involving allegedly emotionally manipulative behavior, which, for the record, in my opinion, any relationships of that matter are always inappropriate with fans because of the inherent power imbalance that is at play. What was also very telling and criticized was their lack of a proper response to the allegations and their clear reluctance in letting that tour crew member go. Okay, remember what I said earlier about LANY having a very close relationship with their fans who are overwhelmingly young women and also profiting of that fact? Well, it feels a little bit icky now, doesn't it? Now, these happenings and some other things made some fans question their support for the band and decide to no longer support the band. Now, what's the aftermath of all of this? Well, the band, LANY, doesn't tweet as much as they used to, which is interesting because, again, they were known for being active on social media and also interacting with fans, but it makes sense because Twitter was basically the platform where they got called out for those allegations. Even now, you can occasionally see ex-fans tweeting current fans information about the allegations to raise awareness about them. An interesting example is also this Twitter account called LANY Chicago. They fall under the update account genre. For the uninitiated, update accounts are social media accounts run and created by fans dedicated to creating social media content, updating on the important happenings pertaining to an artist, celebrity, or whatever. So basically investing a lot of time in serving the community and also promoting the artist. Also, often update accounts with a larger following have a special role within the fandom, and some fans may look to a specific update account for authority on certain important issues. And in this case, even the band themselves respected and were aware of this update account. In 2020, however, this account also decided to stop supporting the band, and instead of just stop tweeting or even deleting the account altogether, This account decided to continue tweeting about important issues such as the Black Lives Matter protest, but also tweeting about the allegations in, not a positive manner. Their current bio on Twitter reads, "If you call yourself a good guy, you're probably not a good guy." This is in reference to a song called Good Guy by LANY, which inconveniently got released around the time of the controversy. The current tweet also reads, "Probably goes without saying, but to confirm, we started this account 5 years ago to support LANY and we no longer do that. This account will be up. We've been liking and tweeting some deeds on the recent allegations. We fully support and believe the victims and you should too." Another interesting tweet is also this one, which is quoting a fan who was still supporting LANY. The current fan tweeted, "You can do it. We are always here for you no matter what. We still hope until now that the accusations against you are untrue." LANY Chicago responded to this by saying, quote, "It's this no matter what mindset that gives men in the music industry the idea that they're invincible. They can treat anyone as shitty as they please because they know their careers will be fine. Let's cut that out." Now, what are other consequences for the band aside from losing a few dedicated fans? Well, their chart placement for their recent album release in 2021 was the lowest they ever had, but I don't think this can be solely pinned on the cancellation, since this album has also received some poor critiques. So in general, it was just not as critically acclaimed as the first few albums. Also, the statistics according to Social Blade for the social media following shows that there was a drop in Twitter followers during the time of the controversy. Shortly after, they briefly recovered by gaining a few followers, but then it's basically consistently downhill for them. On Instagram, however, it's a different story. They still seem to be gaining followers, but unfortunately the records don't date back to the days of the controversy, so I can't see what it was like back then. I also think that the Instagram following can be explained just basically by the fact that they are much more active on Instagram than they are on Twitter, and also because of the visual nature of the platform. Fans are probably more interested in seeing their Instagram posts, which basically lean into the aesthetic the band has curated for themselves. What was also very interesting is that in October of 2021, LANY was set to perform as a headliner at Princeton University's lawn parties organized by the undergraduate student government. After the UCG was then made aware of the allegations, they cancelled the gig, which is huge because I have to imagine the UCG took a massive loss with that decision, since it would have been the first gig in 2 years since the pandemic, and they couldn't find an adequate replacement on short notice. Because the gig would have been taking place on a college campus and the students that petitioned for this gig to be cancelled said they would have felt unsafe, the UCG had to listen to their request. And I think any other festival that had booked LANY as a headliner just wouldn't have done that. They simply wouldn't have cancelled the gig. However, in the big picture, LANY is doing absolutely fine. They still make music, they still have a huge following, they still play live shows, and they probably make more money with one gig than I will ever be able to make in 1 year. They are white, cishet men in very powerful positions in the music industry. They are going to be fine. And I'm not saying that to say a bunch of big words. I'm saying that because I think there's a conversation to be had about how cancel culture seems to hit women and people of color a little bit harder than others. But maybe that's a conversation for another time. So why is LANY still successful? Well, I think that most people who financially support them through streaming music, buying music, and also occasionally going to a show by them are probably not that in tune with everything that happens with this band. I mean, do you complete a full background check on every single artist that you add to your Spotify playlist? My guess is that the majority of the fans that support them are just casual fans who couldn't even name the names of the members. I mean, LANY makes the money through music streams, music sales, and touring and selling merchandise. And as long as they are able to keep those numbers up, and just a small amount of your supporters becoming ex-supporters is not going to change that, you're going to be fine. And what about even bigger artists? I mean, let's take Drake. The man has similar, if not worse, accusations on his record. I'm not going to let you forget about this one, yet he is one of the most successful artists of our time. My best guess is that his fan base probably doesn't consist of a majority of young women and LGBTQ folk, and maybe those accusations just don't hit as close to heart and don't feel as threatening to them for some reason that I just can't figure out. But that's not the only reason. I mean, he's probably just too big to fail. We even saw that apparently even LANY is too big to fail. And if you're such a huge artist, you're probably not even going to notice if a few of your fans decide not to listen to you anymore. It's not even going to show up in his paycheck. Now, this raises the question if cancelling is ever truly effective. And, I'm definitely not able to give a definitive answer to this question, but I feel like you are almost not able to cancel traditional celebrities. Because even if a dedicated bunch of your fan base decides not to listen to you anymore, and maybe you miss them, maybe you miss having a close relationship with them, but you're still able to make a living, you're still able to have a very successful career, and maybe in a few years you'll even have more fans. Who knows? You'll be okay, probably. Well, that's depressing. I mean, depending on your point of view. But next time I'm actually going to talk about cases in which that might be different, like when the relationship between you and your subscribers is maybe a little bit closer, maybe when that relationship is part of your daily business. Can you think of any profession where that might be the case? Anyway, I hope you'll be there for that video. You know that this platform has some buttons you can press down there in order for you to be reminded of that video if you want. You know the business. So until that, goodbye.